I fully agree with the importance of UPR mechanism. They are really important in the sense that the participation is universal, voluntary, the atmosphere is more friendly. But we are coming to an end with the second cycle of the UPR, and next May we are starting third cycle of UPR. There are different views about whether it's desirable to introduce some changes to the UPR mechanism, or what kind of changes that we can accommodate. Many members do not believe that at this stage radical changes to the UPR mechanism is neither possible nor desirable. But I think that there are room for some modest improvement, especially in terms of securing more effective implementation of recommendations and decisions in the previous cycle of UPR mechanism. So I hope that in preparation for the start of the third cycle of UPR mechanism, states and the stakeholders will be able to find some valid ways to help the states focus more on the issue of implementation in the UPR process. This is, I think, what I can say at this moment. Thank you very much.
Agradezco mucho a...
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, Mr. Choi Kyung-lim, President of the Human Rights Council, for your presentation and the detailed response given to all delegations. Thank you very much, sir, for being here. And we will now continue our work with the general discussion of Agenda Item 63. And thank you, President.
Comenzamos entonces el debate.
We will begin the general discussion of Agenda Item 63 until 1 p.m. and will continue on Tuesday. Item 63 of the agenda. I give the floor now to the group. 12 minutes on behalf of groups, 5 minutes of individual delegations. The first speaker is Botswana, speaking on behalf of the African states.
Perdón.
My apologies. Point of order from Algeria.
Gracias, señora presidenta. Una clarificación.
For clarification, please, a point of clarification. We are here participating in a plenary of the General Assembly here in the third committee. However, we note that there is a debate in both bodies at the same time on the same theme. Can you confirm, is this something that is being done on an ongoing basis, or is this a new phenomenon? Because we are concerned there are delegations that do not have enough manpower to attend both. And this theme is very important to all, so we would welcome your clarification on this. In the future, would it be possible to prevent such a situation of overlap? Thank you.
Le cedo la palabra.
I give the floor now to the Secretariat.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. The point made by the distinguished DPR of Algeria is well taken. we were compelled, and colleagues from the General Assembly were compelled to proceed that way this year on an exceptional basis because, as you may have noted, the third committee had decided to prepone, as it were, the appearance and the interactive debate with the President of the General Assembly, with the President of the Human Rights Council, my apologies, and therefore the committee had scheduled the appearance and the interactive debate with the President of the Human Rights Council some time ago. Subsequently, and because of his responsibilities and commitments in Geneva, I think colleagues from the General Assembly, the plenary of the General Assembly, had no option but to schedule his appearance and his statement before the General Assembly on this day at the same time, with the understanding that he would make his statement before the General Assembly at 10 a.m. and proceed right away to this committee to make his presentation and engage with the committee. Thank you, Madam Chair. I hope this clarifies. Thank you.
I thank the Secretariat. It seems that there is a request for a response, a right of reply.
Con Arabia.
Saudi Arabia, we will hear from this at the end.
Perdón.
My apologies, says the speaker. We will open to rights of reply at the end. If I've understood correctly, there's a statement by Algeria?
Madam Chairperson, what was the explanation given by the Secretariat should be duly recorded, and that in the future we do not encounter this simultaneous meeting. We do accept the fact that there are exceptional cases, but this should not be a precedent for the future. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Algeria, for that statement. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of South Africa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We share the same concern raised by the Algerian ambassador, and are wondering what the basis of accountability for the President of the Human Rights Council says with respect to this. Is it the General Assembly or is it the third committee? Is it to the General Assembly via the third committee, so that going forward we're clear, because this is important for us in terms of how we prepare for the substantive work. We do not want to find ourselves playing in different parallel fields, not understanding where these are going to go and what the impact of it is going to be on the body of decisions that are going to be taken by UNGA. I thank you.
I thank the Ambassador of South Africa, and both ambassadors. I promise we will address this matter, and we will submit this to the President of the General Assembly to discuss this for future sessions. So we will now begin our discussion with, we will hear from Charles Nudwake of Botswana, speaking on behalf of the African states.
Madam Chair, and again, on behalf of the Africa Group, we commend you for your leadership and the very effective way in which you continue to guide the affairs of this committee. I have the honor, Madam Chair, to deliver this brief statement on behalf of the Africa Group. The Africa Group welcomes the President of the Human Rights Council and welcomes the opportunity you just gave us to interact with him a moment ago. We commend him for his leadership, we commend him for his commitment and the very constructive manner in which he continues to conduct the affairs of the Council. Madam Chair, the Africa Group wishes to affirm the Council's mandate contained in General Assembly Resolution 60/251 in promoting universal respect for the protection of all human rights and fundamental freedoms for all, without distinction of any kind and in a fair and equal manner, and make recommendations thereon. It is on the basis of these that the Africa Group has consistently been supportive of the work of the Council. The Group views the principles on which the Council's mandate is underpinned to be extremely important, particularly with respect to the principle of cooperation and genuine dialogue aimed at strengthening the capacity of member states to comply with their human rights obligations. It is therefore incumbent upon the Council in discharging its mandate to firmly apply the principles of universality, objectivity, and non-selectivity in the consideration of human rights issues. Madam Chair, the Africa Group is convinced that the Universal Periodic Review remains the most effective mechanism of universal application to assist states in fulfilling their human rights obligations. In our view, this mechanism remains relevant and key towards the promotion and protection of human rights. The Group would like to reaffirm the need to preserve the cooperative nature and principle of dialogue of this mechanism. The Group firmly believes that it is critical that the UN Voluntary Trust Fund for Financial and Technical Assistance for the implementation of the Universal Periodic Review be properly resourced for the purpose of assisting states to develop national capacity and expertise for the implementation of agreed recommendations. Madam Chair, while the Africa Group reiterates its support for the mechanisms and special procedures of the Council and the important work they undertake in the promotion and protection of human rights and fundamental reforms, the Group believes that there is need for the rationalization of these mechanisms and special procedures in order for them to be effective. The Group would like to emphasize also the need for the procedures to comply with the institutional building package, the code of conduct of mandate holders and their respective mandates. In this regard, Madam Chair, we would like to express our support for Agenda Item 10 of the Human Rights Council on technical cooperation and capacity building in the field of human rights. We seize the opportunity to stress that Agenda Item 10 should not be abused for other objectives, including monitoring and investigation. Advisory services on human rights issues should only be upon the request of the state concerned, based on its priorities and national ownership, with full respect for the principles of sovereignty and independence of the states concerned. Madam Chair, the annual report tabled before the committee presents comprehensively the resolutions that were adopted by the Council during its yearly deliberations. The Group is also cognizant of the provisions of General Assembly Resolution 60/251, and specifically operational paragraph 5, subsection 1 of that paragraph, which provides for recommendations to be made by the Council to the Third Committee of the General Assembly, hence its support for universal membership of the General Assembly. Madam Chair, the Group strongly deplores all forms of stereotyping, exclusion, stigmatization, prejudice, intolerance, discrimination, hate speech, violence directed against peoples, communities, and individuals on any ground whatsoever and wherever this occurs. Madam Chair, the Africa Group is strongly concerned by the attempts to introduce and impose new motions and concepts that are not internationally agreed upon, particularly in areas where there is no legal foundation in any international human rights instrument. We are even more disturbed at the attempts to focus on certain persons on the grounds of their sexual interests and behaviors, while ignoring that intolerance and discrimination regrettably exist in various parts of the world, be it on the basis of color, sex, religion, to mention but a few. These attempts, Madam Chair, undermine not only the intent of the drafters, of the signatories of the various human rights instruments, but also seriously jeopardize the entire international human rights framework because they create divisions. We therefore call upon member states to refrain from attempting to give priority to the rights of certain individuals, which could result in negative discrimination at the expense of other international agreed rights, thus run in contradiction with the principles of non-discrimination and equality. These principles, Madam Chair, are well entrenched in the Charter of the United Nations and other international agreed human rights instruments, as they affirm the faith in fundamental rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, and in the equal rights of men and women. I'm just about to conclude, Madam Chair, but before I do so, let me point out that adoption of Resolution 32/2, which is entitled Protection Against Violence and Discrimination Based on Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity. This resolution was adopted on the 30th of June 2016. It's a clear illustration of these attempts. The group is therefore concerned that non-internationally agreed notions such as sexual orientation and gender identity are given attention to the determinants of issues of paramount importance such as the right to development and racism. We are concerned that the Council is delving into matters which fall essentially within the domestic jurisdiction of member states and states to counter the commitment in the UN Charter to respect the sovereignty of states and the principle of non-intervention. More importantly, it arises owing to the ominous usage of the two notions, sexual orientation and gender identity. We wish to state that those two notions are not and should not be linked to existing international human rights instruments. In this regard, Madam Chair, the African Group has tabled a resolution during this session to defer consideration and action on the Human Rights Resolution 32/2 of the 30th of June this year in order to engage in further discussion and consultation on the legality of creating this mandate. We therefore call for the suspension of the activities of the appointed independent expert pending the final determination of this issue. We urge all states and relevant international human rights mechanisms to intensify their efforts to consolidate the commitment on the promotion and protection of human rights of everyone on an equal footing without exception, and call upon member states to continue to step up their efforts towards the total elimination of all forms of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance. Finally, Madam Chair, the Africa Group wishes to assure you of our support and cooperation in the discharge of your responsibilities, and we also affirm our commitment to the fundamental principles of human rights which are enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations. Thank you very much indeed.
I thank the distinguished ambassador of Botswana, Charles Ntwage, speaking on behalf of African states, and I give the floor now to the distinguished representative of the United States of America.
The United States is pleased to have been elected last week to the Human Rights Council for the 2017-19 term. We thank the countries that voted for us and will continue to work closely with the international community to address urgent and serious human rights concerns worldwide and to strengthen the Council as an institution. While we were not a voting member of the Human Rights Council this year, taking a mandatory year off after serving 2 consecutive terms, we maintained our robust engagement in the Council, working with countries from all regions to address human rights situations and issues. The United States welcomes the important work the Council undertook in 2016 to address the situations in Syria, the DPRK, Burundi, Eritrea, South Sudan, Iran, Belarus, Ukraine, and Burma, among others. We are pleased that the Council addressed many important thematic issues as well, including renewing the mandate of the Special Rapporteur on freedom of assembly and peaceful association, addressing women's equal rights to nationality, creating an independent expert to address violence and discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity, focusing on the protection of freedom of expression on the Internet, and working to protect civil society's important role around the world. Work remains to be done to ensure that the Council fully realizes its intended purpose. In particular, the United States remains determined to end the Council's biased and disproportionate focus on Israel, illustrated through Item 7, the only agenda item on one particular country. The United States maintains a principled stand against this structural bias and will continue its efforts to end it. The United States looks forward to cooperating with other Council members to continue to address human rights concerns and to ensure that the Council fully realizes its intended objective. It is essential that the Third Committee recognize the Human Rights Council's role as the UN's preeminent body dedicated solely to the protection and promotion of human rights around the world. To this end, in recent days, we have grown concerned by the manner in which some member states have dealt with the report of the Human Rights Council. As stated during the interactive dialogue, the United States strongly supports the Human Rights Council Resolution 32/2, which established a mandate for an independent expert on protection against violence and discrimination based on sexual orientation and/or gender identity, or SOGI. Yesterday, the African Group tables its annual resolution on the Human Rights Council report. While this is typically procedural in nature, this year's resolution included incredibly problematic language. In attempts to delay the consideration of the HRC resolution, spuriously objecting to the legal basis for the independent expert's mandate. We are deeply concerned about this attempt. Seeking to reopen any HRC mandate some states may deem objectionable under the guise of legal concerns is inconsistent with respect for the Human Rights Council's ability to function. Such an attempt has never been made before. The General Assembly has never attempted to reopen a Human Rights Council mandate where a mandate holder has been appointed and is fully functioning. This would set a very dangerous precedent. There are many mandates created by the Council that various countries oppose, but no country has sought to relitigate those mandates in the Third Committee. Members of the Latin American and Caribbean Group tabled an amendment today removing the language that goes against the decision of the Human Rights Council. We strongly urge all member states to vote in favor of this amendment. If the amendment fails, we further strongly urge you to vote against the resolution. The Third Committee resolution should take note of the report of the Human Rights Council in its entirety and not undermine the Council by relitigating a mandate. Thank you.
Agradezco la delegación.
I thank the United States and give the floor to the distinguished representative of Chile. Ambassador, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Chile welcomes the Human Rights Council's statement and presentation of the report. For my country, the Council plays an essential role as legitimately giving a voice to promote and protect human rights and fundamental